Tosh. Thanks for joining the PyBerlin podcast slash video series today. On behalf of the PyBerlin community, I'm very happy to get to know you, although I already know you as a work colleague. So could you please start by briefly introducing yourself and telling us maybe a bit about your experience with software development?
Hey, yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me too. I'm originally from the US. I moved to Germany just not too long right before COVID, so that was great timing. It's been a nice introduction here. Before Germany, I spent like 5 years in the Cayman Islands, working for a company there, doing Python work. And before that, I was based in like the Washington, DC area. Did mostly Python there as well. So overall, been a developer like 22 years or something now. Focused mostly on Python. Last maybe 10 years or so, maybe. I'm not sure exactly, actually, but something like that. But over the years, written a lot of different stuff. Started with Perl, probably like a long time ago, or Basic or something. Lately it's been mostly Python and Go and JavaScript and that kind of stuff.
So how did you? So first of all, what else is on your tech stack currently, and how did you come to use this stuff? How did you choose this focus, or maybe you didn't choose it at all? How did it come to this?
Yeah, so currently, main project I work on, as you know, is Django based. So I've done a lot of Django work over the years. So I started with Django. It was like before the 1.0 release, actually. I did some work for, I worked there for like 5 years for a newspaper company. So Django was started at a newspaper company as well. So I got in pretty early with Django that way. But I've been writing some Python before that, just not really web development stuff, but just scripts and little apps and stuff like that. So I've been toying with Python for quite a while. But I was using mostly PHP before that for work, for web development. And I did a little bit of work with Rails before I found Django, which Django just kind of suited me better. It's more along the way that I like to think of things. Python in general, I think there's a pretty big difference between the kind of the mindset, I guess, of Ruby and Python. So I started doing a lot of that back then. That was a long time ago. That was in like, probably like the early 2000s, maybe 2005 or so, 2004. I can't remember really, but been a long time. So yeah, and so ever since then, I've really done mostly Python. I've always done a little bit of JavaScript here and there, but it's never been a big focus for me. Python's suited for a lot of things, right? So it's been nice. It's not always Django. I've done quite a bit of work with Pyramid too. So maintained a pretty big site for a long time that was built in Pyramid. That was fine too. It's okay. It's not bad.
Also mentioning that you contributed to it once, right?
Yeah, made a few small contributions to Pyramid, things that helped us on our last project. That's one kind of thing that's nice about Pyramid. I think it's the community is pretty nice and it's actually pretty small. So they're pretty open to requests. If you want to make any kind of significant change to something like Django, there's a lot more hoops to jump through, I think. So that's a pretty big difference. But yeah, I don't even know if I answered the question. I kind of just rambled there, but yeah.
No, totally. next one. You are currently a lead engineer on your team. What does this role mean to you?
Yeah, well, that's a weird title, I think, honestly, because it can mean like so many different things at different companies. I think it's a very varied role. One lead position is going to be very different from another. But for me personally, it's much less about development. Like it's much less about writing code, I'll say. Actually, I don't write much code at all anymore, really. It's much more about, you know, making sure everyone else is writing code, really, and writing code in an efficient way, and just kind of trying to keep things steered and everyone going in the right direction. Making sure that no one has any obstacles in their way, and making sure that, you know, the project from a higher level, from the technical level, is things are going smoothly, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's been interesting. I don't mind it though. A lot of meetings, but it's okay.
And in considering someone who is at the beginning of their career and pursuing such a role, would you have like some tips or advice for someone like that?
I guess the biggest advice would really be to like make sure that that's really what you want to do, right? Because it is a very different role from a pure development role, right? I made a mistake earlier in my career, really, where I was really just starting to get really passionate about coding, right? I'd done it before, but it was just kind of, I wasn't super passionate about it, right? I wrote code and that was my job, but I really started getting pretty deep into it and taking it much more seriously. And I got a role, which was, again, this was a long time ago, but the title was like website administrator, which was really much more of an administrative type of job. And, you know, a lot of meetings and plannings and things like this. And again, I wrote code then, but not as much as I wanted to. And I really didn't like it. You know, I wanted to write code and I didn't want to do all these other things. And so, yeah, that was a mistake on my part. So I spent like 4 years doing that and then decided that, no, this isn't really what I want to do. I want to write code. And so took another job that was a pure development position. And then I spent like the next 15 years just writing code, focusing on that really. Maybe not 15 years, 12 years or something anyway. And then, but now I'm getting old and stuff. So I've had plenty of time writing code, so I'm much more okay now with doing other things. So yeah, I think that's a big thing I would advise. And it's fine to write code, right? Like there's nothing wrong with having a pure coding position, right? And there are places where you can advance your career while still staying in a pure development position. And I think, you know, that's good. Like I said, I did that for a long time and I was totally happy doing that. So yeah, if you want to move into a different role, make sure that it's a role that you really want. That's my biggest piece of advice, I'd say.
And if, say, someone would be, would have decided that they want to aim for this role, what could they learn early on, or what would you wish you would have learned early on, preparing you for this role?
Let me see. That's a good question. So I think there's a lot of things that are not, again, go back to like not code related, right? Like it's not just about the code that you write. It's about thinking about the problem that you're solving and the larger ramifications that has, right? There's lots of people that can write code, but in my opinion, to be like a truly good developer, there's a lot more things you need to think about than the code that you're writing, you know. If you work in a company that's all Python based, you want to be very considerate before you write something that's not Python, for example, right? Like if you want to be very hesitant to start building a new app in Clojure or something, right? Like, yeah, and you have to weigh those decisions carefully. And also consider things like architectural decisions and code readability, maintenance, I think these are important things that are easily overlooked, and I definitely overlooked them like earlier in my career, right? Like I wanted to write cool stuff, and I wasn't really worried about, 6 months or a year from now when I have to come back and change this or someone else does, what that really means in the long-term ramifications of these things. So yeah, that's one important thing. Asking questions, right? Like, and asking good questions about everything, really. Question your assumptions, your own assumptions too, right? Like, your own assumptions are probably the most important ones to question. And, yeah, I don't know if that answered it really, but another rambling answer.
I assume it's also, I mean, a person can only do so much. They also have to have the right context in which to grow into a role like that if they want it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I think the further you go in your career, a lot more of your decisions are tied in much more to the business side of things, right? Like, realizing when it's okay to write code that may not be perfect if it's much faster and it solves the problem, and also realizing when that's not the best idea, right? Like, sometimes it's okay to write a quick hack for something that's can solve the problem quickly, and sometimes it's not, and I think developing those instincts on when it's okay to do that versus when you need to spend a bit more time and think about something a bit more further is important. Yeah. I don't know how to develop those really, other than just, being conscious of it and, trying to think about it, and just time, right? Like experience, you start to learn, like, this could be a problem down the road. You start to see these intangible red flags and warning signs of things like that, I guess. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, also, always imagine there's also this one often overlooked aspect of like the social part of this job or a role like that. I don't know if you see it also like that. Is it, did you find like people skills being really important for lead role?
Definitely. Yeah, I'd spend more time dealing with people than I do with code for sure. I think that's super important, and I think that's important anyway, right? Like, especially if you're looking for a job and or even if you're at a job, you want to maintain there and stay there and advance there. You want to be someone that people want to work with, right? Like, it doesn't really matter how smart you are or how good you are. If no one wants to work with you, you're not going to get very far, right? Like, I've worked with some people who wrote amazing code, but they were difficult to work with, and I don't want to work with them. It's not worth it. It's just, but I'd much rather have someone who writes good code and they're great to get along with and they're easy to work with, and that type of thing, than someone who writes amazing code and I'd dread having to deal with them, right? So yeah, but that's just my opinion. But I do think personal skills are super important.
I totally agree on that. So maybe to jump to the next topic. So you're living and working in Germany
I am.
right now, but I think only since relatively recently.
Yeah.
So how different is it to work in tech in Germany compared to the US?
Yeah, it is different. Yeah, it's very different actually. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things in common as well, but this will be my third country to work in tech now. So it's interesting seeing all the variations between companies. But yeah, so it's, you know, it's a very international company too, though. So I don't think I can characterize everything as just being a German company, right? Because, you know, everyone on our team is from a different country, pretty much. I don't think we have, well, maybe 2 people from Germany, but everyone else is from a different country. So it's hard to characterize whether what I observe currently is really a German way, a German difference versus just general cultural differences, I think. Yeah, as far as what's different, I think in the US, like, it's very common where, or more common, where work is like really kind of a larger part of your life, right? Like, if not your whole life, like where everything is kind of tied around your job, including like insurance, friends, you know, just everything. And so that's pretty different. I don't feel like it's that way here, or at least not in where I'm at currently, right? So that's been a big difference. And I feel like there's much more of a push to just kind of like work through difficulties in the US, like burnout, I think feel like is taken much more seriously here. I think in the US it's almost like a, in some places anyway, I won't characterize the whole entire country, everything's very different, but I think it's much more common to, it's almost like a badge of honor in some places, right? Where it's like, I worked like 20 hours a day for 2 weeks in a row or whatever. But that's not really healthy, I don't think. So my impressions of what I've seen.
Sorry,
what was it?
I remember being shocked when I found out how many vacation days people have in the US generally compared to Germany, at least.
Yeah,
It's also
that's been a nice
symptomatic.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been very nice. Yeah, in the US, you know, you get maybe 10 days or something. I think it's probably the most common, if you get any, right? You're not guaranteed any, but I think in most professional jobs, you typically get maybe 10, or I know some tech companies now are starting to do, I've been gone from the US for a while, but I know some tech companies now are starting to do like the unlimited vacation thing, but I think that's often an illusion, right? I don't know how often that's really true. Maybe it is, but I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, so maybe one thing that's a bit related to this, so you had to relocate recently. What kind of challenges did you have at work or generally in Germany after relocating?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I think a lot of it wasn't really necessarily due to Germany, but just the situation, right? So not long after we moved, like COVID happened and stuff, and so it's been difficult, like integration period, I'll say. Like I didn't really get a chance to really integrate much before, you know, we like went into isolation or lockdown and everything. So we're still working from home, so I don't really go into the office or anything. So that's been, I mean, it's fine. I'm not someone that needs to like do a lot of stuff a lot of times and things like that. So it hasn't been too bad for me, but it's definitely made it more difficult, like making friends and things like that. That's been interesting. I think it's probably been harder on my wife than on me personally, but yeah, that's been interesting. And it's also been quite difficult with the language because, you know, we speak English at work and everyone speaks English because, you know, everyone's from everywhere. English is kind of the de facto tech language, it seems like. So everyone speaks English, so I don't get to practice any German there, and then not going out much in the life outside of work either. So again, not much German. So that's been pretty difficult. And I'm taking online classes now, so we'll see. Maybe that'll help. But so far, I'm still terrible. Yeah, there's a lot of differences too, though. Like there's a lot of paperwork here. Like a shocking amount of paperwork for me, just like getting settled, you know, like so many like forms to fill out and certificates to get and take this over to this place. And everything's very like, feels very still geared around doing things in person here, which is different, right? Like you have to actually physically go so many places to do things. That was kind of interesting. But it's not bad. Yeah, in general, it seems, you know, like at least it's like there's a system, right? And there's a dedicated form. People know that form that you need, and they'll give you the form. So at least there's that. Whereas like previously, when I was in like the Cayman Islands, it was like the opposite, right? Like it's like, yeah, no one knows. So yeah, that was a big difference. But yeah, it's been good though. I like it here. I really like Germany. It's been really nice.
So if someone listening to us is also going or will go through this, through relocating, what tips would you give someone who will go through this to overcome the challenges easier?
Yeah, I guess there's multiple stages, right? Like, so the first stage, I would say, like, before you come, make sure that you have any paperwork that you would need, right? Like birth certificates, all of that type of thing, marriage certificates, whatever, right? Like any kind of paperwork that you could possibly need, like records. Make sure that you have the official versions before you come, because there's been a few things that have come up where we didn't think to bring them, or we brought the wrong one, right? Like our marriage certificate, we just brought, I don't know what it was. It's just one we had. I don't know what it was, but it was not the right kind. And so we had to like call the state and get some official stamped version of it and have it mailed here, and it ended up costing like $100 or something to get this marriage certificate here. So yeah, all that stuff's super important. Like make sure you have all of that stuff before you come, because it's much more difficult to get when you're not there, right? Like if you get it before you come, it's pretty easy. Just go to City Hall or wherever your government office is and pick it up. It's no big deal. But when you're here, it's not nearly as easy. So yeah, that's a big one, I would say. Yeah, the other, I don't know if I'm really qualified to give advice on much else, like especially like integration wise, because I'm still pretty isolated. So I mean, it's good to find groups, right? Like PyBerlin, right? That's a good one. Like whatever your interests are, you know. I've been like lurking in the Berlin emacs group a little bit. I haven't really contributed anything, but I've kind of been lurking in there. So a few other groups, right? I could just kind of see what's going on. So yeah, I think that's good. You know, that'll help get integrated, and give you something to do, meet some people with similar interests and stuff. But I suppose that's pretty standard for moving anywhere, right? So I don't know if there's anything special there about Germany, but yeah.
So I would deduce that Würzburg doesn't have an Emacs group.
Not that I've found yet. Maybe I should start one. Might be a little small, but I don't know. Hey, you never know.
Yeah. So
I know of exactly 0 other Emacs users here. I'm sure there's one somewhere.
they're all hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe to wrap it up, could you please share a piece of advice on software development for our listeners? Just maybe the first thing that comes to your mind.
Oh, that's a tough one. I think if I was just going to have one blanket statement, it would just be like, you know, like be curious and investigate things. Like if you are looking at something and you don't know how it works, like figure it out, like investigate, drill down, you know, keep going until you have a better understanding of it. If it's a function or a library or a framework or whatever it is, like really understand the tools that you're using as best as you can. I think that's super important to get a it's really helpful, right? If you have a deeper understanding of things, it's much easier to do things, because nothing ever really goes exactly as planned. And so if you have the understanding of the fundamentals, it's much easier to adapt, I think. So yeah, I'll say that.
That's a great piece of advice. So yeah, thanks a lot for taking your time and for the really nice conversation. I'm sure the PyBerlin community will enjoy hearing this. And yeah, have a great evening, and I'll see you around.
Cool.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks. It was nice. Bye.